Tell it. I know what you're
Here's
going
my
to say.
biggest pet peeve, beyond measure, probably of anything in life. You're at an airport. You're at the gate. You're sitting around for a freaking hour, maybe longer, waiting. And all of a sudden they say, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start the boarding process. And you know, like you're in maybe the second or third level to get boarded. And so, you know, you're getting your stuff together. You want to make sure. And all of a sudden your partner goes, I think I'm going to go to the restroom.
Now, hold on.
No, you're not.
See, your anxiety.
You're not leaving me now.
Your anxiety about being first in line to get on that plane. All right. Let's get this subject rolling.
Let's go. Let's take a little drive.
Yeah, let's go on and take a little trip. Take a little
What's
trip.
that song? My favorite song. Cruising. Sing it
Oh,
for us.
I am not singing
Cruising on a Sunday afternoon.
it. So today.
No, that song.
I know you hate when
I'll
I
be
say.
Huey Lewis.
I hate when you. No, I know you hate when I say. So today we're going to talk.
So today, at 11 Alive.
But we're going to talk about traveling as a couple.
That has been a big source of frustration with us. No, I'm just teasing.
I was well.
No,
speak for
I'm
yourself.
teasing.
I mean, it can be for some.
Yeah.
I know a couple that only made it 15 minutes down the road.
Who might that be?
I'm not going to say. I don't want to
Is anybody
expose
I
it.
know?
I don't know. Oh, yeah.
Do I know them?
I don't know if they want this story out there, but they were going on vacation, heading south. They made about 15, 20 minutes down the road to the first gas station to fill up and got in a little tiff and canceled their vacation and turned around and went home. You know who you are. So traveling.
So they were on a 14-hour trip and they made it 15 minutes?
Correct.
That's awesome.
But obviously there were some unspoken frustrations that they hadn't talked about that
just kind of all culminated.
Right, in that first 15 minutes of the drive.
Have we ever had anything like that? Any remotely close?
Not yet, but we also have only been together for 6.5 years, or however long it's been. 6 years, a little over 6 years, yeah. So I think the factors change over time with frustration.
So,
I think.
Actually, you know, we talked about this before. If you think about, you know, meeting somebody, and then obviously you want to try to find as many things in common as you can, or at least the interest to try different things, right? It just helps raise the odds of the relationship lasting, but travel. So, you know, I met you. I am a travel bug. I don't like the grass to grow too much under my feet. I've always been moving and going, and
I saw that right away.
Partially because of my ADD, and then partially just because I'm adventurous. But yeah, so we met, and fortunately, you had done a lot of travel differently.
Well, I wouldn't say a lot.
Yeah.
No.
But you were definitely open to it.
I was ready for it. Yes, I was all about it.
That was a big attraction for me. I was like, oh wow, we can. Great, because having a travel partner. Well, there's two things. First of all, you know, being in a relationship where the other person wants it. If you both like to travel, I guess is what I'm trying to say, opens up so many aspects, and not just about the destination. You know, not just about where you're going, but so many other components.
Well, it's good for the relationship. You know, like they say, a lot of times it's a reset. You kind of step out of the everyday grind and work, and you get to really connect on vacation and travel. And so we went on our first little road trip. Let's see, we met in September, the end of September. And was that October?
It took about a month. It was about a month later.
Yeah.
A little over a month.
To a wedding. And so we had never traveled together. We really didn't know each other very well at all at that point, at a month in.
I had RSVP'd as a 1, and then I was able to throw a +1 on there.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they were cool with it, because it was kind of late in the planning.
So that was our first experience on a road trip together. And
that was a solid 7-hour drive, 8 hours, 7 hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very memorable. Had a great time, and we actually meshed pretty well as for travel partners. Although you were a very well-behaved driver, which you're a little. You kind of held back on your aggressive.
We'll be right back
driving
after
skills,
these messages.
which I get to experience now.
This is where we're going to put in a commercial.
So.
Are hemorrhoids bothering you?
We were both on our best behavior, for sure.
No, but I think what we're trying to say is, in that, you know, the time at this particular one you're talking about, we drove, we didn't fly. And in that time, it's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah,
than,
I mean,
than
that's
going out on a date or hanging out around town.
yeah,
or-
a lot of windshield time, a lot of
Yep.
that. Really, all you can do is talk.
Right. Right. And so the whole dynamic changes. And I don't know, for us, I thought it was just smooth.
It was.
Smooth.
It was
You were
easy.
smooth.
No, you were smooth
No, you
until.
were.
Are we going to tell the hotel story?
Wasn't my story to tell.
Terrible,
I'll tell
humiliating
mine.
hotel story. All right.
So we're 1 month into it.
Yeah,
we're still getting
we're
to know
1
each
month
other.
in, and of course we go on this road trip to drive to Georgia for this beautiful wedding that we were invited to, or that you were invited to, and I was tagging
Yeah,
along.
and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, and I was going to meet
Outdoor
your
wedding.
daughter for the first time.
Oh, yeah,
So
and
yeah,
that's right.
I was
That would-
nervous about that
That would have been the
because
first member of my family.
yeah, first member of your family. I know how close you are, and I was really intimidated to meet her.
So you didn't want anything to happen which would cause you any kind of embarrassment or
No.
uneasiness or discomfort.
Right. Oh, are you setting me up? Are you teeing this one up for me?
It's a softball pitch.
I mean, this
too.
might be kind of gross to some people, but of course,
That was
of
that.
course. So we head out for the trip, and I'm on my period. Sorry, Matt. The worst heavy days.
We'll have to bleep that out.
That's okay. He can bleep his name out. So here, yes, 1 month in, we go on this road trip. It's horrible. The worst few days of my period.
Like Amityville Horror horrible.
Yes, like Carrie. And
People
so,
are like, did
so,
you have to say that?
so what happens in the hotel room when I wake up the
It
next
was there,
morning?
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
The Godfather
Yeah. It was bad.
without the horse head.
I was so humiliated. It's creepy and gross. And sweet Scott, I mean, you were swinging for the fences, I guess, on this relationship. Took those sheets from me quickly and went and rinsed them out in the bathtub. Wouldn't even let me do it.
Well, I got a lot of experience cleaning up crime scenes, so there's that.
So embarrassing. All right, well, let's get off this subject. So, like, anyways, new experiences
So
on travel, not
we have now just lost
disgusting
every
ones.
follower that we have.
maybe.
That's funny though. No, I mean, you
Oh,
know what?
so
It's just life though.
embarrassing.
It's life. It was one of those things where you obviously don't plan for it. It's like,
Yeah.
and then you're mortified.
Yeah.
And so, like, what do? You can, well, there's a lot of things. I guess you could run.
Well, it would have been a long run
All
home,
right.
and I'm not much of a runner,
Yeah.
so that would
Um,
have been a problem.
But, I mean, so it kind of helped.
Break the ice.
But, yeah, it was an icebreaker. But, I mean, for me, I could have handled it a few different ways.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, anyways, we'll skip on. We'll get off that subject.
No.
We were just
Well, no, my point
Some
was
highlights
is
of our
that
first trip
my
together.
point was is that we're early on, we're
Highlights.
traveling, and so how do you make accommodations for each other, right? And we're
Yeah.
going to talk a lot about it. So this was a situation where I could have reacted in a few different ways. I could react in a way that made you felt even more uncomfortable than you already were, which visibly you were mortified, or I could have chose what I chose to do, and it made the trip enjoyable for you. You were able to relax, and you know what I mean? So you can
Yeah.
extrapolate that to all these other aspects when it comes to travel.
all right. Well, let's get off this
That was my
particular
lead-in.
subject.
Why
That's
is it- are
very
you
sweet, but
uncomfortable?
I'm like ready to move on. Now that I've said it out loud, I'm
Yeah.
embarrassed again.
So go ahead.
So, anyways, I think for us, we learned right away we're pretty good at traveling, but there are times when you have frustration and you got to be willing to compromise. Like,
Yeah.
we're very different airport people. I learned right away, which actually were a good combination because, in respects to each other, because of those differences in the airport. 'Cause you're a little eek,
Well, there's a reason for that.
get through.
There's a reason. My whole experience, air travel experience has been kind of built. You know, I used to work for the airlines, and so anybody that's out there that's worked for the airlines knows this term called non-rev, which basically means everybody says, "Oh, you work for the airlines? Oh, you get free flights." Well, in theory, yes. And there was a time back in the day where it was a lot easier to get on a plane, but with frequent flyer programs and then increased capacity and airplanes, it just got progressively worse. Factor that with trying to fly with more than one person. So basically it works is you can fly for free if there's an open seat on the plane. And so I would always, there was always this sense of There's always a sense of like everything was always stressful. Am I going to get on the plane? Is it going to be a seat? Am I going to get to my destination? Am I going to make my connection? So it was that. And then when I moved on from there into business travel, the same thing. And everybody out there who's business travel knows it's not glamorous.
And that's fair. I mean, I came from not
Oh,
traveling
hey,
a lot
let's show
through air.
up.
So I was just happy to be
Mai
on
Tai,
vacation,
cocktail.
to be going somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, you've had me running through a airport at a high rate of speed before, and which I know is you have to.
Well,
And I lay back on you during those airport things because I know you're a little your stress is a little heightened.
I think
So I
it's.
mean, you definitely have to compromise and kind of know each other's travel styles.
Yeah, I think it definitely illuminates people's different character. Like I've heard people say you get to know a true person's character when they're drinking and when they're driving. Hopefully not at the same time, right? Then their true character comes out. Well, I think same with air travel, especially at an airport. I'm like regimented. I'm like,
Oh,
here's
yeah.
the gate, da 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 da.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, there's a Chick-fil-A. Can we get some nuggets?
You know what my
Or-
biggest.
oh, I know. Go
my
ahead,
biggest
tell
pet-
it. I know what you're
here's
going to
my
say.
biggest pet peeve, beyond measure, probably of anything in life. You're at an airport. You're at the gate. You're sitting around for a frickin' hour, maybe longer, waiting. And all of a sudden they say, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start the boarding process. And like you're in maybe the second or third level to get boarded. And so, you're getting your stuff together. You want to make sure. And all of a sudden your partner goes, I think I'm going to go to the restroom.
Now, hold on.
No, you're not.
See, your anxiety.
not leaving me
your
now.
anxiety about being first in line to get on that plane is changing that story a little bit because I don't wait till they say they're boarding. It's like maybe 5 minutes till they announce they're boarding, and I'm quick.
No, it's
I'm quick.
it's like I'm up in line,
But I'm
staying there,
excited,
waiting for my turn to walk
and that
through.
makes me
hand
have
them-
to pee. And then I don't want to have to go through the plane with everybody looking at me to get up and go pee, so I gotta go before we get on. So once again, you compromise and you relax a little and let me go.
No.
You should be used to it by now.
So you need to talk about these things. People need to talk about these things before they go on their first flight, because
They've never been an issue for us.
well, no, people don't realize. If you're the last person on the plane, guess what? You don't have any room for your carry-on. Right? Or you're sticking it all the way in the back, or usually in the back, sticking all the way in front, you're in the back, or it's usually the other way around. You got to swim backwards.
Oh, okay. Well, you can give your travel tips another time as far as.
Oh, yeah, we'll do trips and travel techniques. Yeah.
Yes, because you're really good at that, and I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see.
I thought you had an interesting fact that I never knew, a statistic or a fun fact about travel.
And what's that?
I don't know. It's your fact.
Well, I don't remember it.
There you go. There you go.
So I was reading, it said those who traveled as a couple rated their relationship higher on every single factor. So, I mean, that kind
Is that a
of,
Google fact? I mean,
it was a Google fact. It was
yeah.
off some surveys with traveling and couples. And I can see how that's true for travel. I mean, we've had a lot of great experiences. I think it's fun to experience new things together, which you had done a lot of traveling. I had not, but there have been a few trips where we got to experience things that neither one of us had done, which I really liked because with you having so much experience, it was fun to get to be with you during those experiences, like the McNeil River trip.
what was that?
You don't remember?
No, I remember. Yeah. You have to go run with the bears. Run with the bears.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an exciting trip. So just a real quick, ever since I was a kid, I always watched Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Every time it was on Sunday, I would be in the front of the TV watching it. And years and years ago, I remember them doing this segment on this game sanctuary up in the western part of Alaska about these bears. And at the time, it was probably only open a few years, run by the DNR of Alaska. And I had these dreams. Oh, man, one day I'd love to do that. Fast forward to 2018, and I was online, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is a lottery system. Anybody can put in for it. It's a drawing type for a permit for 4 days to go out there. You take all your own gear. I say you're on your own, but everything's up to you to get there. And
Yeah. Very small group
very
gets
small
selected.
group.
What was it, around 10? 10, 12
yeah,
people maybe?
10 people
10
max in a group, and then you would hike out to these falls where the bear would be fishing the salmon run that would be in. And it literally is like it's so hard to get a permit. It's like winning the lottery. and then they disproportionately allot so many of these permits to Alaska residents as opposed to non-residents. Us obviously being non-residents, so our chances are even less. But on a whim, we're sitting around one day having a glass of wine. I said, I'm going to put in for it.
Well, you asked me. You told me about
Oh,
this
yeah.
trip, and you said, "Would you do something like that?" Drinking my glass of wine. Sure.
I've
Sounds
seen Winnie the Pooh on
adventurous.
Disney. No
Sure.
problem.
Yeah.
And you really didn't have any idea what was entailed.
No.
And I did. Yeah. And so fast forward, 10 months later, I get an email. It says, you've been selected for 2 permits for, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, I was ecstatic. And I yelled out.
You were almost white. You were like,
couldn't believe
"Christy,
it.
come here."
Couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Had done, obviously I knew all the planning and everything and I had to go, but I didn't care. And I was like, I remember you in the other room. I'm like, hey, I know where we're going on vacation this year. Right. And you came in and I explained it to you. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh shit. It was an oh shit moment.
It
for you. You were
was
like,
for a
this is
second because I
real.
was like, "Hold on, what? We're doing what?"
Yeah. Yeah. And so
But I was excited.
No,
Like
you
I wanted
were.
to do it. It wasn't that I didn't want to do it. I was just like, "Oh, this is going to happen." It was
Yeah,
very
for people that
shocking.
don't, this wasn't like a tour. This wasn't a tour guide. I mean, this is, you pack your shit out to the most remote part of Alaska, and you got a couple DNR wildlife biologists with you that are fully armed, with marine gauge 12, Mossberg 12 gauges in case there's an issue, and you're right up close with the largest bears in the world.
Yeah. And so here I had never truly camped. So
You
you're
never-
responsible
You never
for
camped.
your housing, your tent, you have to filter your own water
yeah. Mm-hmm.
from the river. You have to bring your own food. Of course, there's no refrigerator, so it's all that camp freeze-dried food.
Yep,
Yeah,
everything.
you're responsible for
And
everything.
so I kid people all the time because this was before we were married. And they're like, you did that to you? You did that? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, that was my litmus test. If she can pass this, she's wife quality.
And you know
She's
what?
wife worthy.
It was the most amazing trip. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the most amazing life experience. Still to this day, we were comfortable, had a great time, thanks to you, since you had all this right camping
Yeah.
supplies and
Well, remember we got we tried to get in the first day because you had to like go from a remote part of Western Alaska or Central Alaska, catch a bush plane in, and the fog was so bad that we had to turn
they
around.
couldn't land. Yeah,
They just couldn't land, so we actually had to burn a day. So we burned it at the bar, which was pretty great.
with pull
Playing
tabs.
pull tabs, drinking beer. It was awesome.
What was that? Homer?
It was
Where were we
Homer.
at?
I think it was a
Homer,
salty
Alaska?
dog at Homer, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Salty dog.
that's it. Had the best time. Got up next morning, tried again with our crew.
Oh, yeah.
Not our crew. We weren't with them, but there were other people.
Well, we can tell this little snippet that was a little bit of stress on that travel trip that you felt like I handled very well. So we're at the
man.
hotel in Homer getting our stuff together, and you had to have this permit. They said you have to bring
Right.
your permit.
So they issue a paper permit and they mail it to you, and it's like the Willy Wonka golden ticket, right?
Exactly.
Except it's
yeah,
not golden.
they were like,
You got to have this with you,
Yep.
and 2 or 3 other pieces of documentation. Go ahead.
so we're getting our documentation together. Scott had his little file. He's usually very organized with documents. I mean, he still has his hunting license from when he was 14 years old.
Might be worth
So-
something one day.
I said, you have the permits. I have everything. I have it all. He had kept it in our safe at our house to make sure that nothing happened to this permit. So we get there and we start flipping through his little file.
Sitting at a bar, or outside anyway.
Scott can't find his permit.
Yeah.
He had left it at home in
Yeah.
the safe.
I had
somehow.
never had such a sinking feeling in my stomach.
Yeah, because
ever.
they had warned before, we will not let you off. You can just fly back on your little float plane back to Homer.
Yeah. Yeah.
if
Or swim back if you're
if
feeling
you
really
don't have
adventurous.
your permit. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And you are so sweet, like, and you knew it wasn't in there, and you're like, give me that. And so you're going through it, you're looking through the file, and you know it's not in there, but you're like, oh well, maybe it's here somewhere. And you were stalling. You were stalling.
Because
for
I'm
time.
thinking,
I know.
what the hell? We've flown all the way
Yeah.
to Alaska to do this trip. You've already paid for you had to pay for your own float plane to get
Yep.
there. You've paid for all this expense and this once in a lifetime experience. You're not going to get drawn twice.
And your ticket, we had your permit and not my permit.
Yes,
And
and
you're
there's
like,
no
well-
way in hell I'm going and doing
You're
this
like,
by
well,
myself.
And they were assigned by name.
Yes,
So it wouldn't be like, at the worst case, you couldn't say here, you can take mine.
right.
So for 20 or 30 minutes, it was like, what in the hell? So that's a whole other thing about proper planning for
Scott's travel tips.
travel tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check your shit 2 or 3 times before you leave.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
I was
I
sick for
had
you.
the head of the DNR his phone number, his main office. I called, just happened to get him, and I explained the whole deal. And he was quiet for a minute, and you could in his head he's like, "Oh, you're that guy, you're this guy," and he's like, "You know what? They've got you on the manifest. I'll just let them know, and you'll be fine." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, you'll be fine." And so I was like, oh. So when I got there, when we finally flew over and landed on the sandbar, right, and they were taking him, and she kidded, the one girl kidded me. She says, "Oh, you're Scott, huh? We've heard about you." So it was a big brouhaha after that. But I'm telling you, I know we're off track because we talked about travel, but like, I guess the point I would say from people is double, triple, quadruple check everything before you leave. Don't make it so it's
and
not.
let your wife check behind you. She's like, no, I have everything. When it's something that important.
Yeah, double check, right?
Although I wasn't your wife yet.
No.
That was my test.
There's an old saying that used to be drilled into our heads: is 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So
the wise words of Scott Sargent.
So you're just having double of everything, because if one piece of equipment breaks, you got another one. If the only one you have breaks, you're out. So same thing with planning.
But this story for me is a good tip to people that step out of your comfort zone if your partner wants to do something else. I mean, of course, you have certain boundaries. Like, I'm not going to go do like Fear Factor stuff, lay in a bed of spiders or something. That's my set boundary. But try something a little different that's out of your comfort zone. And because we made those special memories together, and it's something that we can really bond on, something that only you and I experienced together, definitely, I think, helps solidify your relationship.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of takeaways just from that one story, like you said, about travel. Is some of us can be pretty regimented in our routines, and I think this applies. This applies not only to people who are dating. It could be applied to people who have been married a long time. Could apply to two friends. Could apply to a parent and a child. It's we all show up differently, and we all have different expectations. At the end of the day, if you're taking a trip together, you both want to everybody wants to enjoy their time. So how do you create an environment and an expectation so that everybody gets to enjoy their time? And that means making allowances.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I guess what we're saying is when you're planning a trip, try to include. I actually have friends that did this with their kids, and I thought it was brilliant. I'm not sure that I was ever really good with my kids growing up, but like plan in things that everyone's going to enjoy. Meaning, there's going to be things you're going to be able to want to do collectively, but then there's going to be things that one person's going to want to do, and another one's not. I'll give you a perfect example. Had an opportunity a few years ago to take a father-daughter trip with my brother. So he took his daughter, so it was a father-daughter, cousins, brother thing. It was really nice. We had a chance to go to Iceland, which was great, and things were really good. I mean, there's not a lot to do in Iceland when you're not in the big city, so that'll work. But when we got to Reykjavik, there was a lot of different things, and so my brother had a few things he knew about the city that he wanted to go see that were important to him that I could freaking care less about. But we did. So we said, all right, we're going to plan our day. We're going to go do this. We're going to see this, because this is important to him, and then this is important to me, and then the girls want to go see this. You extrapolate that out anywhere, right? So you guys probably saw that in some of the cruises you took, because you've got a group of girls or family that you do things with, right?
Oh, yeah. I guess you're right.
If I was planning a trip, I wanted to take you, like that, say to go see the Bears. Like, I wanted to make sure that you were having a good time. It wasn't always doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Make allowances for, encourage the other person to do their research, see what they might.
You're really good about that, about thinking of the other people you're with and making sure they're having a good time.
I'm not sure my kids would agree with you.
Well, at least with me.
Over the years.
That's what I'm saying. We learn over the years, and but it's okay to also have that me time when you're on vacation. If you need a break, you're spending 24 hours a day with this person. It's okay to say, I need a little, just like our last little trip. We were down at Orange Beach. There were some mornings that you went off and just had your quiet time going for a nice early morning walk. I'm not a morning person, so I enjoyed sleeping in and reading my book, or so. I mean, that's okay to allow for that too.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to always be in your face.
Yeah, I think it's that me time, right? You're talking about like playing times where you can go off and do your other things. I know I'm not a big cruise person, but I think that that's another thing where there's so many different opportunities, say on a cruise ship, for people to go and kind of maybe do their own thing. Maybe you want to go to the gym, maybe you want to go this or that. So just build that in, and then there's the aspect. If you always have one person, typically, even if there's two people, and the chance of it goes up when there's more. There's that one person that wants to plan every freaking minute of the itinerary from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep.
Well, you know what? If they're both like that, that's all fine and dandy. Because I feel like you and I are pretty similar. Like, we like to chill. Like, we can be in Hawaii and like lay on the beach all day and be fine with that.
No, I totally agree. But what I'm saying is, there's always that one person that just like, all right, guys, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, and it's like, for 7 minutes, we're gonna go look at this, and you're like, no. And so, but a lot of people will just be quiet and
communicate.
That's it. That's what I'm saying.
Beating that dead horse, but yeah, that's so important.
Yeah, because you're not going to have a good time if you are not enjoying getting to go at your pace, and then the person. So, it's important to sit down with your travel party and have it all out on the table.
Lay out some expectations on what you all both want out of this trip.
For example, our really close friends that we get a chance to, travel with. We've gone to Mexico with, and we've done some other things. I mean, they're phenomenal, and we love them to death. And so we really enjoyed like doing things together. We get
They're
together, eating and hanging out. But we also there's just this. Well, I guess we did talk about it early on, but the unspoken knowledge that, hey, you go do your thing, we'll go do our things. We don't have to, you don't have to get my permission or permission. More so, we're not gonna be offended if they want to go do their own thing or vice versa. But then we'll plan. Like we may have dinner together one night, maybe the next night we won't. Whatever.
Yeah.
And it just makes it so flexible, right? So having travel friends, and we're in the stage of life where we can do that maybe and not have to lug our kids along. Sorry, kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so having that just makes it that much better.
And speaking of kids, I mean, it's not feasible, especially when you have young kids and you're so busy tied up in their activities, or you may not necessarily have the money, if you're a younger couple or even an older couple, you may not have the money to do these big trips. You don't have to do a big trip to make these kind of connections. Any little getaway weekend, it's all about the connection time and the intent to really focus on one another, I think, is what really helps the relationship.
Yeah, I think just make sure you plan with the intent in mind that it's to enjoy and recharge.
Yeah.
I never did this with my kids, and I thought it was a phenomenal idea, and I wished I'd have known it then. But I know some people that have said they're going to go on a trip that's going to require them to fly somewhere. So they may say to one of the children or two or whatever, all right, we're following your lead. In other words, you got to figure it out and lead us. Now, obviously, when they're 4 or 5, that's not what I'm talking about. But when they're able to rationally think and make some decisions and be challenged, you get to the airport. Okay, now what do we do? And all right, we're going to go.
That's a really good
thing
to do.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it can be messy and be a little chaotic, but a couple things are happening. You're building this confidence into, in this case, your child, but you could do it with anybody, right? You're giving them an opportunity to step in and solve something they're not used to solving, or being in a situation and dealing with it that they're not used to. Now, if it becomes just too overwhelming, too stressful, pull the plug. But that's a great. So you can take the opportunity and travel to not only just enjoy it, but to grow, to learn, to stretch, to try, like you said, try different things, be open to trying different things, be open to, well, you're going to get me on my soapbox now, be open and comfortable, learn how to get comfortable in a situation that you're not comfortable in. This really happens when you travel to countries where you don't speak the language, and where there maybe isn't, because there's just not English everywhere. And I've been to airports and places where you're on your own, right? You got to figure it out. So I'm okay with that, but some people aren't. He's falling asleep over
No,
here.
my right eyeball has dried out so much I can't even hardly. I'm trying to like blink some moisture into it.
But like, turn your.
I mean, you
turn
have
your
so many
dial.
travel stories and so much experience in travel. I feel like we're definitely going to have to extend this to another podcast. But
Yeah.
today we just kind of wanted to talk about,
So takeaways.
yeah. What are your takeaways? I have no takeaways.
You don't have any takeaways?
I mean, no.
First takeaway is don't date somebody that doesn't like to travel if you like to travel.
Well,
First and
maybe they don't
foremost.
know they like to travel, and maybe they just haven't had the
Well,
opportunity. Because I feel like I really hadn't had the opportunity
There's a
to do
difference,
much
though.
travel.
I mean, there's a difference between somebody
before.
not having an opportunity and saying, "Yeah, I'm all about it. Don't know much about it. Don't know what I'm doing, but I'm cool with it. I want to try it." That's different.
That's true. That's
than
a good
somebody
point.
saying, and I've heard this once. I've heard 1,000 times. I don't camp. The only camping I do is at a Holiday Inn, or I'm a glamper. And if you're a camper, and especially backcountry hardcore camper like me, like I love that, then keep walking. Like, don't stop.
Oh, so
because-
the bears were really a test.
well, I mean, in a way, a little bit. I was like, but I enjoy that in my life, and I want someone to share that with, and that's important to me. So if that person's not willing, then like, hey, that's
Dang,
great.
Scott's just
I wish you
cutting 'em
luck.
off.
I'm out. Just don't settle. It goes back to don't settle. Communicate and don't settle. So that would be my first thing.
Well, I think travel's really important, and it's an investment. Like I said before, I know I said before, a good friend to me said she always
yes.
takes the time to plan a trip with just her husband. She looks at it as an investment in her relationship, and it really is.
That's a fantastic point, because so many times, especially when you're raising, you can be in a situation where you're raising kids or having a family, and there isn't a lot of discretionary income. And I get it. And there's a lot of people in that there today, especially given the economy the way it is, that it's easy to rationalize it and say, well, I don't have time for it. Or, I've got to do this and that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Do a little weekend trip close to home. It,
Yep.
it just helps keep the romance alive, helps keep that connection.
Yeah. It really is an investment in time. So you've got, make sure you pick the right person. If you like to travel, you're on the same page to travel. Look at it from a different mindset, that it's an investment, not an expense. I say thirdly, make sure everyone is included in the planning, in the sense that there's something for everyone in the trip, because then everyone will feel valued and appreciated. Otherwise, you're going to have resentment, and somebody's not going to be happy, and it's not fair. It's not fair to them. What else? What else would you say?
I'm not a tips and tricks person.
Yeah, and don't get so caught up in the activity that you forget to just be present. You said this a minute ago. Don't forget, especially when you're traveling as a couple, don't forget the romance. Don't forget the quiet time of just being. And it doesn't mean you have to be some exotic location. It could be going to a museum. It's not my thing, but whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, enjoy the time that you're together to connect.
Yeah.
And,
Or eating Garrett's popcorn, where you have a orange
Yes.
ring from the Chicago mix around your mouth, and
Yeah.
you have your one hand that's totally orange, like a Oompa Loompa. It's those little things that really stick with you and make great memories.
Yeah. We'll wrap this up, but one of the things that has been on my mind for a while, and I actually have it written down, is I do want to write out a little, I don't know if it's a blog or a little thing about travel, because I don't want to say tips and tricks, but things that I've learned over the years from traveling. And obviously, the bigger the trip, the farther away the trip, the more complex the planning. And it could be very overwhelming for people.
So
It really
that
is.
made it really easy for me. I had no clue to where to even start, and you kind of took those reins, and you've done a lot of the big planning, and I really appreciate that.
So I'll work on maybe getting that little project done, and maybe benefit the people. So,
Yeah.
all right. So where are you taking me next?
To Zaxby's for some chicken wings. I love
Awesome.
you.
I love you too.